Out here, the wind had a memory. Like it was searching for someone who hadn't responded in years, it whirled through the barn's bones. A house too large for one man had Calderic sitting on its creaky porch. Beneath him, the boards had turned, gray from sun and time. Beside his boots, his old patched hound, which had vanished into Hazy, was coiled up. Like vines winding up a deserted gate, both had adapted to the quiet. 10 years of silence. His voice had nowhere further to go, not because it was broken. He observed the world in fragments. Hoping along the fence line is a sparrow, a barrel surrounded with dust. As the day wore on, the porch shadow gradually extended across the steps. He never gave the road a direct glance. That was the source of memories, and memories were more powerful than words. However, the wind shifted that late September morning. It carried a peculiar aroma of smoke, perfume, dread, and something flowery from the south. He remained still, not at the beginning of the hoof-beats, not even the creaking of the gate. With their tiny but docile horses, 2 riders came up. The first was a tall, straight-backed woman of maybe 27 with tight braids of black hair and eyes as keen as a rifle. The second had a smaller frame and was a few years younger. Her cheeks were sunken out by sadness or hunger. It was difficult to determine which. As though it contained a secret or a newborn, she had a satchel pressed to her chest. At the porch they paused. "Neither got off the horse? You called a rook?" inquired the elder. He moved slightly in the rocker as slowly as old syrup dripping. "Downton without blinking or nodding." She said, "We heard you don't talk. That suits us just fine." Nervous, the younger woman looked about. "Have you got a barn?" His hound stood, turned, and trotted in the direction of the rear meadow while he remained silent. The women looked at each other. They merely required that invitation. Like frost before a freeze, curiosity nipped at the ranch's margins. Calder observed as they vanished behind the house. Then he stood slowly. Without asking, they entered the barn. Inside its stone fireplace, which hadn't smoked in years, he witnessed them starting a fire. 2 bedrolls, a crate, and something covered in canvas that they handled too carefully to be supplies were among the bundles they brought. Like an ember stuck behind ribs, the fire that night flashed through the barnwood's fissures. Calder didn't get much rest. He didn't. He made himself some black coffee in the morning and placed it at the barn door. The older one was standing behind him when he turned, alert but not surprised or grateful. "Unia?" she said. "That's my name." Green as rain-soaked pine boughs, he looked directly into her eyes. She gave the porch a nod. "You want to know why?" "We're here." Something in his silence leaned forward, but he didn't nod. "We came from the Hollow Hills commune," she stated. Giles, a preacher, offered chains and promised peace. Calder narrowed his eyes. Rumor had spread about that location. An attempt at religious resistance ended in slavery. Those hills were never far from the law. When we left, my sister and I took something. She gave her bag a tap. Names, ledgers, and proof. Her voice trailed off. "They will pursue us. All we need is some time, quiet, a location where men don't engage in gossip." A pause. "Are you still willing?" With his shoulders tightening as though he were carrying something weighty and unseen, Calder turned back toward the house. He didn't say anything as he left the barn. That was sufficient. For 3 days. From the porch he observed them, watched. Unihammer reinforced the barn door with planks and watched Ruthie, her younger sister, bend in the garden he hadn't been in for 5 years and pull weeds. They didn't speak unless absolutely required and didn't ask for anything more. One morning, Ruthie left him coffee. As she put it down, she muttered, "Thank you." He raised his gaze to her. She introduced herself as Ruthie. He parted his lips, then closed them again. It's too late. He didn't trust the words to keep their shape. They were like dust in him. He carved once more that evening, a small horse made of wood. Since the day he buried his wife, he had not whittled. Outside the barn door, he left it. Unia didn't bring it up the following day, but he noticed her carefully putting it in her trunk next to a cloth-wrapped pistol when he came around the side of the house. He heard Ruthie sobbing on the 4th night. It sounded kind, as if someone were pleading with an unresponsive object. Then he entered the barn. She rocked slightly as she sat with her arms wrapped over that purse. "I held her," she said in a whisper. She was only alive for 2 hours, her gaze locked with his. I was unable to abandon her there. Behind the empty church, beneath the cottonwood, we laid her to rest. They are completely unaware of her existence. Called her, moved forward, and sat down next to her gradually. He sat with her without touching her. Calder restored the east fence, gate, and trough pump the following morning. It seemed as though something inside of him had resumed breathing, and his hands remembered being used. Once more the wind shifted. The hound's hair rose when it became low that night. Calder noticed them as soon as he walked off the porch. Shadows against the moon, 3 riders. Unia had already gone outside with her weapon. Behind her, Ruffy trembled her lips. "We were discovered," Unia stated. Calder gave her a look. He then approached the barn and came back carrying his old repeater, a lengthy case. It had been 10 years since he had touched it. Slowly, as if he were greeting a tomb, he opened the case. The authors yelled, "Rook, you're harboring thieves." "Turn him over. We'll let you catch your breath." Calder descended to the dust. Like thunder encased in velvet, he spoke for the first time in 10 years. No, nervously, the horses pawed. He asked, "You sure, old man? Nothing else, simply lift the rifle." The first man drew. With a shriek, Calder was forced from the saddle. When his bullet impacted the metal of his belt buckle and began to flare, the second fired wide and yelled. The third bounded ahead. Calder sighed, took a leisurely stride, and fired once more. After screaming, the third man collapsed into the dust. The horse darted into the brush as the second turned and fled. The only sounds to break the silence were the crackling firelight from the barn behind them and the clatter of a dropped weapon. Calder caught on Unius's attention. She whispered, "You talked." He glanced down at the rifle, then at Ruthie, and finally at her. He murmured softly, "I forgot how loud I used to be." Unius grinned. "Just enough to warm the dust, not completely." The remains were buried at first light. Dirt and the sound of wind sweeping across graves too shallow for forgiveness, no prayers. Ruthie positioned the wooden horse atop a mound. "We're going to stop running," she declared. Weeks went by. A second cabin was constructed. He dug post holes with Unia's assistance. Ruthie grew some herbs. There were now 3 rocking chairs on the porch. Calder discovered Junius sitting on the stairs one morning, oiling her rifle. She didn't raise her head. "You continue to speak infrequently." He took a seat next to her. Omitted the phrase, "I was cured?" She cast a sidelong glance. He said, "Just means I know when words matter." There was silence once more. It was a good one, though. A communal one. Ruthie brought bread that night. Calder grabbed it out of her. Grasp. They touched. She didn't back down. She remarked, "You built this place for one. Do you still wish to pass away here by yourself?" He didn't respond. However, he left 2 coffee cups on the porch railing that evening. Both were deserted. At dawn, now the wind blew softer. Occasionally, when everything was sufficiently silent, Calder would only say what was important. "The fence needs to be fixed. You get some rest." "I understand." He also laughed once when Unia threw a plank on her foot and swore so loudly that it woke the dead. Ruthie gave him a look. "Now you chuckle," he gave a shrug. "I wasn't used to the amount of noise you brought." Her head rested against his shoulder. "You haven't yet seen anything." He closed his eyes and inhaled the aroma of soil, smoke, and lavender soap. And Calderic wasn't plagued by quiet for the first time in a decade. It kept him in place. Not all offerings include gold. Some arrive with danger, fire, and 2 hands full of hope and ash. Some leave behind something they love while posing as problems. And occasionally a guy believes he has been buried for 10 years when, in reality, he has merely been planted. He blossomed now,